Welcome back, pilots. Today I'm flying from Mountain Valley Airport in Tehachapi, California, and I'm flying in a race called the Dust Devil Dash, which is a unique race because the goal in this race is to fly the furthest straight out distance possible. It's not about speed, it's only about straight line distance to your landing point. And I think the way to win is to fly well, but also to pick the best route according to the weather. And the best route is very unclear today, so it's going to be an interesting race. Unlike a normal race, there is no set course. You can choose your own route. All that matters is how far you fly. I'm going to be launching in the 8th position today. There is no start gate, so as soon as you're airborne, you go. I've done hours of research on the weather and the landing options along the route I'm planning to fly. Let's take a look at the forecast. The choice of routes today is going to be absolutely critical. Here's the northern route along the Sierra Nevada mountains. We're looking at low cloud bases, rain, heavy overdevelopment. But if you can get through that OD, then the potential distance is very good. And if that route doesn't OD too badly, it's probably the winning route. The other option for today is a southeastern route, gliding across the Mojave Desert in the blue, which is going to be tough, but then you get to these fairly continuous lines of clouds over the mountains of Southern California. And they could take you all the way to the southern border to a place called Yocumba, which is a glider port, or you could possibly go further southeast to Blythe or Yuma. But the potential distance is limited by the southern border and by the extent of clouds. There's this big blue gap here that would be hard to cross. So I think the southern route is safer. There's less chance of overdevelopment, but the distance is limited compared to the northern route. I'm going with the southern route, but I'm not at all sure it's the best choice. I know some pilots plan to go north, and if they succeed in getting past the overdevelopment, they'll go far and win the race. The southern route should be easier, but the biggest challenge will be in the very beginning, where I'll have to glide across a huge blue gap over the Mojave Desert. I top out around 11,000 feet in my first climb, and set off to make a 90-kilometer glide across the Mojave. There are actually clouds over the desert, but they're part of a high cloud layer that blew in from the coast. And even though they look like they might work, I don't expect them to be connected to the ground by thermals. I know I'll have to scratch around low in the desert before I can connect with the clouds over the mountains. Once I reach those clouds, things should get easier, but right now I'm chewing my fingernails and worrying about landing out in the desert. Some pilots who launched before me are already down low, desperately searching for a lift. I hear them on the radio reporting their altitude and locations, with distress apparent in their voices. The airport on my right is Palmdale, also known as Plant 42. It's a military airport where the next generation stealth bomber is being built, the Northrop Grumman B-21 Raider. If I land there, I'd probably be greeted with assault rifles. So my current landing option is a dirt road in the middle of nowhere. It's a really hot day, and the temperature in the cockpit is increasing as I descend into the valley. I'm sweating bullets and dreading the thought of landing on a dirt road in 100-degree heat. I find a weak thermal that only goes for a few hundred feet, but it's a sign that there's at least something happening here. Finally, I run into a decent one, and climb high enough to get Crystal Airport and glide. If I end up landing out, that will be a much better place to be than a random dirt road. I'm not out of the woods yet though. I need to reach the clouds over the mountains before I can relax. Rami Yanetz in Tango Gulf has already made one attempt to get under the clouds, but he was forced to retreat back into the valley. I don't yet have enough altitude to make an attempt of my own, but I see a glider that's not in the race circling in the valley ahead of me, so I continue in that direction in hopes of finding the thermal. I get there and find nothing. The thermal has already expired, so I turn toward the mountains. A pair of weak climbs gets me to the point where I feel I can try to get onto the mountains. At this point, Rami has made a second failed attempt, but I'm going to try anyway. I'm aiming for this cloud, which is bigger and darker, but before I get there, I run into a thermal that gives me the altitude I need to make it to the clouds for sure. I've finally made it to the good stuff, and I find what I've been looking for. The other pilots are finding good climbs on a convergence line in the valley, so we've all made it past the gauntlet of the Mojave Desert. I enjoy an easy cruise at Cloud Base, but I'm about to discover that there's another big blue gap to cross coming right up. Wow, those next clouds are pretty far away, and I'll have to fly over a mountain pass, which can produce a lot of sink. Should I detour to this little cloud over here to get some extra altitude? If it isn't working, the detour will have been a waste. I'm just going to go straight for the big clouds in the distance. Even though this is a contest, I'm not concerned about making the best cross-country speed possible right now. There's plenty of time left in the day to cover the distance I expect to fly. The most important thing is to survive the difficult sections and make it to my goal. That being said, I've made a mistake here by flying faster than I should have. I was feeling a bit pumped up after making it out of the Mojave Desert, and optimistically selected McCready 2 for this glide. This mistake will come back to bite me shortly. The four of us are neck and neck as we approach the foothills around Big Bear. The performance differences between our gliders is about to become a major factor. The lower performance gliders are getting low and are forced to slow down and scratch. Rami's ASG-29 is the best of the lot, and he reaches the clouds with a comfortable margin above the terrain. I'm flying an LS-6C with 17.5 meter wings, and I arrived just a bit too low to get under the clouds. If I had flown slower, I would have arrived higher, but now I'm forced to scratch my way up this ridge with good clouds just out of reach. If this doesn't work, I'm looking at landing in a dry lake out in the valley. This might be something here. Damn, where'd it go? It's so frustrating being this close to the clouds and not being able to climb. Here we go. I finally get above the ridge and can move under the cloud nearby. Now this is more like it. There's 7 over Big Bear, 12,100. Phew, I made it. That was a critical moment in the flight. For a second I thought it was all over, but persistence paid off again.
Every single Golf Fighter 7, say again?
Just crossing fast and coming up on Mount San Jacinto.
I take a moment to enjoy the beautiful views over Big Bear, but soon I'll have to make another major decision. Do I turn southeast toward Blythe, and get potentially better distance, or head south directly to the border. Rami announced that he has crossed the pass to the south. If I follow him, it's likely that we'll both go as far as the clouds can take us, and end up landing in the same place. Since his glider is better, and the contest is handicapped, a tie will mean I beat him. The route to the southeast looks uncertain, with lower cloud bases and smaller clouds. I don't need to take that gamble in order to win, assuming that the pilots who took the northern route don't go farther than us. However, the southern route looks like no picnic either. There's yet another huge blue gap to cross, and what looks like overdevelopment on the other side. This time, I'll take it slow and conserve my altitude to ensure I can make it to the clouds. I'll have to cross another mountain pass here, and the big question is whether there will be any sink to deal with. Wind typically accelerates when it's going through a pass, which causes sink above it. Cool, stable air from the coast should be rushing through here in the afternoon, but it seems that the marine push has only just begun, which actually produces lift as the cooler, heavier air pushes the hot inland air out of the way. This condition usually doesn't last long, but my timing is perfect and the air is rising over the entire pass. This cloud on the right may be evidence of this phenomenon. Instead of heading straight for the clouds, I decide to take a slight detour to fly over the mountains. I'm hoping there will be some convergence above them. I'm passing San Jacinto Mountain now. It's quite an imposing sight. I'm not finding any lift over these mountains, and it looks like I won't be able to reach the next peak to the south without a climb. The towering cumulus I saw from a distance before has begun to spread out into an anvil, shading the ground all around. This could be the end of the line for me. As I get closer, I spot some smaller clouds that appear to be separate from the larger storm. They're my only hope for saving the flight. It turns out to be a boomer. 3,500 feet later, I'm back on top of the world. It's raining cats and dogs under the storm cell. I better keep my distance from the core. Lightning could strike at any moment. Sometimes you can find a little lift along the edge of a storm, but not this time. There's nothing but sink, so I break off and head for the next group of clouds. The clouds ahead are pretty sparse, but I see two groups along my path. One group is in the distance, and if I can get there, I should have Yacumba made, which is right on the border of Mexico. It's looking like I'm on the home stretch now, and my thoughts turn to the other competitors who went north. I have no idea how far they got. I'm not getting any cell service out here in the middle of nowhere. All I can do is fly as far as these clouds will take me. The Dust Devil Dash is an interesting contest because the performance of your glider can either help or hinder you, depending on the weather. On a strong day, the higher performance gliders have the advantage. But the mediocre weather today has favored my glider. It had just enough glide ratio to make it across the big blue gaps, but it's not among the best gliders in the race, so landing at the same place as a higher performance glider will be to my advantage, thanks to the handicapping system. That's the last climb I'm going to get, so now it's just a question of how far can I get with the altitude I have. I call Rami and we discuss our options. This is a friendly and casual contest, and Rami is generous enough to share his knowledge of the area with me. He's aiming for Calexico, to the southeast. It's further than Yacumba, and I have it in glide already. Looking at my computer, it does seem to be the furthest airport reachable from here. There are farm fields in that area, and if we were being really competitive, we could go for the furthest one we could reach. But neither of us really wants to land in a field and subject our crew to a difficult retrieve. They're doing us a big enough favor as it is. I'm on final glide, so it's time to take in the scenery and celebrate a bit. Upon touching down, I see my outside air temperature reads 99 degrees. My air vent feels like a hairdryer blowing in my face. I can't wait to get out of the cockpit. The airport is deserted, but a little while later, Rami comes screaming overhead and joins me on the ground. Now the big question is, did I win? I look at the satellite trackers and I see that most of the other pilots didn't make it very far north. But one glider is missing, Golf Tango. Did he make it up the Sierras? He's a good pilot and a good glider, and he launched first. I text the contest organizer to find out. Independence is halfway up the Sierras, but it's not farther than Calexico. So that means I won. What a great feeling. This is my first contest win. It was a fun, challenging, and unique flight that I'll never forget. Big thanks to David Crowder for being my crew and cameraman. Thanks for watching. See you next time.